This week, our guest originally hails from Southeast Texas and has been a working actor in New York City for over 20 years. He's not only worked in TV and film, but most prominently Broadway. His Broadway credits include Cirque du Soleil's Paramour, Amazing Grace, Disney's The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and most recently, before the world stopped spinning, Wicked. So please welcome to the show the incredibly talented and effortlessly charming Bret Shuford.
Wow, what a nice intro. Hi, guys.
Hi, Bret. Welcome.
Hi, Bret.
That is
Welcome
a
to
nice
Before the Break.
intro. Effortlessly charming. Hello.
Well, Adam and I go way back. He helped me with my first show, which was ironically called Charming, my first solo show. So thank you for that. Yeah.
And that solo shows something that you wrote totally from beginning to end?
Yeah, I mean, I put it together at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center's cabaret conference where I met Tracy Stark, who's my music director, and I spent like 11 days. It's a magical place, and anyway, it was born there, and the idea was, and it wasn't original music. It was all like pop songs and musical theater songs. But I took every single song that I could think of that had to do with a prince, because I thought Disney princesses get all the glory. So I started looking at like Prince the artist, like all these Rodgers and Hammerstein songs, Disney songs, and I put together a story about a prince from the Kingdom of Texas who went looking for his castle, blah, blah, blah. So it was like...
Oh, how nice. Oh, fun.
Yeah.
It was a really wonderful
Great.
show.
Thanks, Adam.
How did you help him, Adam?
Well, so he did it at Don't Tell Mamas, where I worked.
Right.
Haven't worked in a year, but work there. And so doing lights and sound there, I was Bret's technical director. And as you can imagine, we get a lot of different shows come through. The spectrum of talent and everything is quite wide there. But Bret was one of the amazing shows that we've had in recent years. It was really, really wonderful. It's like, sometimes there's shows you just sort of like drudge through, and then there's others you like actually really love watching, and you're like, oh shit, I have a light cue right now, but I'm already like, I'm invested in the show because it's so good. So Bret's was certainly one of those. It was very good. But that's where we met at Don't Tell Mama, because I was his tech director.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. And Bret, you're from Texas, Southeast Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, born and raised. I grew up in a town called Beaumont, Texas, and then most musical theater fans usually go, Beaumont, where the hell is Beaumont? It's a Footloose reference. But then I went to high school in a even smaller town called Orange, Texas, right on the border of Louisiana, off of I-10. And and that's where I grew up my whole childhood, even though I tried to get my parents to let me audition for the Mickey Mouse Club or get me into like a high school performing arts because I loved the TV show Fame. They would not let me. I had to finish in Southeast Texas. But as soon as I graduated high school, I got the hell out of there.
So you knew from the get-go, was it a very Friday Night Lights type upbringing down there?
Oh, 100%. Friday nights is for football. What do you mean you're going to the theater on a Friday night? There's football games.
Is there like football at the theater?
Exactly. It's
weird. And how was that growing up in an environment like that?
For me,
aspirations.
It was very frustrating for me because I knew very early on. I think I was 6 when I was like, "Oh, that's what I want to do." I saw I loved musical movies, of course. Like my favorite movie was Annie. That shows my age, but it was fairly new at the time.
That's Tommy's favorite movie too. So he goes on and on about Annie.
I loved the original movie Annie, Carol Burnett, and so my mom took me to see a production of Annie that was like tour. I think it was a tour. that toured through town, and when it finished, I just cried. I just like had this like visceral reaction at like 6 years old, and my mom, I was hysterical. She thought I had got stung by a bee. She was trying to calm me down, and when she finally calmed me down, I just said, I want to do that.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I think that happens a lot. It was the same thing with a production coming through my hometown, and every story is the same. We're just watching and just like, oh my God, that exists, this thing. And where would we be if not for those touring productions that came through these no-name towns? Otherwise, we wouldn't have experienced that, right?
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Great.
it's
So,
so funny because you
what
see
was the
things
high
like
school?
that, whether it's movies or musicals and stuff, and you go, there is certainly incredible talent that you're watching, but you also in the audience go, that looks like so much fucking fun. I want to have fun and get paid for it. I want to do that. And
Yeah,
it
it's
just
really
clicks.
interesting to think about like that age, because I'm not thinking about making money then. Like I think I remember just thinking I'd watched so many movie musicals that I didn't know you could do it in the flesh. And so when you see it live and you see people doing it in the flesh and you're like, wait, I can make someone feel this way. Like I can do that. Like on screen it feels like a picture, but here it was just like this like moment of like, oh, I can physically get up there and do that. I want to figure out how to do that, because it just made me feel so good, as an audience member.
That is true. We in my grandmother's basement, she only had like three videos: Sound of Music, Sister Act, Oklahoma, and I guess the first taste is only from media, and then we see, oh my God, this is an actual live thing. This is amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And so going into high school,
So where did that? I was
do
waiting on
any-
Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So in high school, did you guys put on musicals or anything, or?
Oh, so kind of my journey really from there was I started doing community theater. There was a lot of community theater. There was like three main community theaters in the area where I lived, and Beaumont community. Well, there was one called the Port Arthur Little Theater, and they were doing Annie. And my dad saw it in the newspaper, and my dad called them and said, "My son loves the movie. Can he be in your show?"
Oh,
And they said, "Sure,
love
bring him
that.
down." And they put me in some like, "We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover. I'm doing a jazz square in the back," and I was like 7, and I remember I was ready. I was like, and I remember the choreographer being like, "You're gonna do a jazz square," and I was like this, and they were like, "Yes."
good Lord! Look at that man! Look at that boy!
Right? And I was like, and then I could do this, and they're like, "Great,"
Oh,
So
how incredible!
I love
that's
that
how
your
it
dad
started,
called,
and then
put my son in Annie.
yeah. I mean,
You don't see that very often.
I love
think
that.
the thing that they learned about, I'm very persistent, and I'm very passionate, and I will if I believe in something, I will fight tooth and nail to get there, and I will figure out what I need to do to get there. And I think, anytime I got in trouble, my parents, and I was taking dance classes, and I, but community theater started. And what they would do is, if I got in trouble, like if I got a bad grade, they would try to ground me by not letting me go to rehearsal or not letting me go to dance class. And I would get so depressed that I would lock myself in my room. And my mom was like deeply concerned that I was going to be like suicidal if I didn't go to dance class. So I don't know if that was me like manipulating them, or if that was like like a real like reaction, but that's how passionate I was about it.
Wow. I think that parents can tell. My mom did the same thing to me. I couldn't get an A to save my life, but she said, if you get a decent GPA, I'll get SNL tickets. We didn't live in New York. but like it was that important,
Wow.
and I was that bad as a student, where the only thing that would inspire us has to do with like the craft or something relating to it.
If I
Totally.
wanted to
So
see
did that
certain
work?
movies in the theater, I had to get certain grades, and then my parents would take me to go see the movie.
Isn't that
See?
And
amazing?
by God, I got those
Wow.
grades and saw that movie.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember even earlier, like I wanted to be like, the parents got me. I had three brothers, right? And they all loved sports. They all did soccer and t-ball and baseball, and so when we were really young, they enrolled us in all of those sports together because it was easy for them to carpool or drive us all there. I was miserable. Like I hated it, right? And I remember like the soccer practice, I would go sit on the outfield and like pluck flowers. And my mom's like, get up and play. And I would yell back to her, I don't have to do this to be a song and piano man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I like five.
Everyone's like, what did that 6-year-old just say? Oh my God.
Yeah. And so, that was the first thing I wanted to do, was be able to like play piano and sing. I don't know if it was like watching Elton John or what. And my mom said, it was at Christmas time. She said, I asked for piano for Christmas. And she said, if you want a piano, you need to learn how to read. I was 5. I kid you not. That was on a Monday. On Friday, I came to her and I read to her a Dr. Seuss book.
Boom.
Right?
Wow.
That's how much I wanted it.
On Monday, he had a GED. Yeah. Wow. Jesus.
So they got me a piano for Christmas, and and then I didn't want to practice. I really thought I was just gonna sit down at the piano and be like, start singing Piano Man, and like
your legs raise up like the troubadour, right? Yeah. Didn't happen, huh?
No.
So you are very goal oriented. Like, I want to do this and I will do it.
Yeah, and I would even say it's not. I don't even know that I'm so goal oriented as much as I'm vision oriented. Like I have a really, if I get a clear vision of something, I want to figure out how to manifest that vision. I think I love directing now for that reason. It's kind of fun to watch like a vision come to life. But I don't think, I never, like goals are important, but I think we can attach an outcome to a goal and not really have a clear vision of like what the goal will do for us. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so after,
So where did we go after high school?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. So I went to high school.
Are we at college now, or are we in high school?
I don't know. Where are we? I'm just rambling. I community theater, and then went to high school. And what's interesting about high school, my freshman year, we moved to Orange, and we moved there because the guy who was teaching drama at the high school there, his name was Ken Rush. He was a great drama teacher, and he had directed a lot of the community theater I had done. And his daughter is Jessica Rush, who has been in multiple Broadway shows now, has a podcast called Mama's Talking Loud. And she, we did community theater together growing up. And my freshman year, we moved there. He was my drama teacher. And after my freshman year, he quit and moved. And I felt so abandoned. I mean, high school sucked after that. And I couldn't wait to get out. And so what did I do? I threw myself into like Thespian Society. I was on the state board for the state of Texas. I did dance competitions, a lot of dance classes. I was in choir and did all the state choir competitions. And I just was like just kept myself so busy so I didn't have to think about the fact that I lived in Orange, Texas.
Wow.
Sorry, Mom, I don't have time to go to soccer.
that-
Do you see all the things I'm doing? Soccer what? No, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
couldn't
it's
wait
true.
to get out.
You had to do what you could do with the limitations that you were given, and I think that's that's very textbook. I mean, I'm sure Adam, you were doing that stuff with Civic, and in my town there was like a local radio station that you could come on and do stuff like. So we did what we could, because at the day we just laid in bed saying, when the hell am I going to get out of here and do this? You can only do what you can where you are, but you can do a lot. And that's such a great illustration. I mean, you can't get more farther away than Southeast Texas, and here you are doing shit.
Yeah, I mean, I again, just very driven and vision oriented. I knew, like, I wanted to be on Broadway. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know how. I didn't know anybody who'd been on Broadway. I didn't know, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm going to live in New York. I just got to get to this moment. And so for college, I ended up getting into University of Oklahoma's musical theater program, and they had offered me a scholarship. And
Wow.
I really wanted to go to New York, but my parents didn't want me to go too far from Texas. I didn't really understand that, and I still don't really understand it. I think that's just parents being selfish, to be honest.
Right.
But I remember I was like, fine, I'll go to OU. And I went to, and I actually, this is interesting, my senior year of high school, there was an Equity Theater in Galveston, Texas, which was about 2 hours away. It was an outdoor theater called the Galveston Island Outdoor Musicals. It doesn't exist anymore. And I saw a listing in the newspaper, because internet was very new at the time. And I drove to their open audition by myself. I was 17 and auditioned to be in their ensemble for the season. They do 3 shows every summer season. And I booked it. And I came home. I remember I told my mom I'm going to this, came home. They called, they offered it to me, and we started rehearsals the day after I graduated high school. So I went to my graduation, went to the party, didn't stay very long, packed up the car the next morning, drove to Galveston, and did my very first professional gig for that summer. And I had just turned 18.
What a way to go!
You're
into
like
college.
you're just walking. You get the diploma and you're walking out the door. Like, my dreams are like.
I was like, happening. Deuces, I'm out. I am done with this place.
That's incredible.
So,
okay.
And I got paid like $100 a week, and I was like an apprentice, and I had to clean the bathrooms, and me and some of the people that worked there, because there were Equity Broadway people who were coming there. It was the first time I'd been around people who were Equity, who'd been on Broadway. I was totally green and completely starstruck. And I see people from that summer. Sometimes I'll run into them and I feel apologetic for my behavior, because I was this kid right out of the boonies of Texas, working with these people. But Erica Hill, who's been in multiple Broadway shows, was an apprentice. It's just crazy to think about it. But it was so informative. I learned so much in those 3 months.
I bet you were in heaven.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone else was in hell. It was an outdoor theater in Galveston,
Right.
Texas. And I'm like, this is amazing.
And what great
It's funny when we
experience
start
college.
off.
Oh, you both talked at the same time. Say that, Adam?
Go
ahead, Adam.
what amazing experience to go into college with then.
100%. And I feel like it set me up in a different mindset going into college, because then now I had I understood a certain work level that I was trying to achieve in the end. And so I went to OU my first freshman year, and great. It was a relatively new musical theater program led by one person, this guy Lewis, and I got cast in the first main stage show, and the seniors were hating me because I got cast and I'm the new guy, and then I got to play whizzer and falsettos my freshman year, and it was really cool year. And then after the end of that freshman year, that same teacher quit, left. It was the same
You're
thing that happened in
abandoned
high
once
school.
again. Ugh.
Yes, it was horrible. I was like, what is happening? And so
turns out it was you the whole time. They're like, I can't.
It was all me.
I can't.
But I ended up between my freshman and sophomore year working professionally at Lyric Theater in Oklahoma, which was a summer stock theater in Oklahoma City, and that again, very informative, learned a lot. But then my sophomore year, they hired these two people to teach at the program to replace this guy, and it was just bad. It was just not good. I mean, we had a musical theater teacher who came in, and she would say, "You should." This woman, I don't want to say her name, but it was. I remember we showed up for this audition class, and we walked in, and she said, "Okay, when you go to an audition, you should always show up late. It shows them that you're in demand, that you're always that you're in demand. You're coming in, and just say, 'Sorry, I'm late. I came from a gig.'" And then
my God,
you should pick a letter from the alphabet to sing your song, and you should stage your song on that letter. So if it's a T, you're gonna like cross down stage, and then maybe go to the right, and then maybe go to the left, and like you should, while you're singing your song, just pick a letter from the alphabet. And as you come into the room, don't talk to the pianist. Just put your music down on the piano, come into the room and say, "Hey, I'm singing this," and then count the pianist in. A 1, a 3, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then when you're finished with the song, you want to slap everybody right in the face.
Well, and what she said was, when you're done, say, "Sorry, got a gig, gotta go." Grab your book.
Oh, got a gig, gotta go.
And was she a working professional, or did she have to teach because of this?
This woman.
These are the please don't ever do list.
Yeah. I remember I was so appalled that I went to the dean. Like, I literally grabbed my book from class, went to the dean's office, and said, "What the hell is happening here? We are spending so much money to come to this school, and you've got..." So I started looking at schools to transfer out, because I was like, I don't have time. But I've only got 2 more years after this, and I'm not gonna like wait for the school to figure this out. Now the school has a great program now, but I ended up transferring to Wagner College, which is in New York City, and I finished my last 2 years of college there.
You don't hear a lot of acting students. You hear that in football and in basketball. I'm not getting playing time, so I'm going to take my talents to Baylor. But like, you're an act, and you had the know-how to be like, "I don't like this production. I'm out."
No, I just was like, what am I doing? I'm in Oklahoma, and I want to be on Broadway. Like, what am I doing? So
Good for you.
Knew about this school, Wagner College, and I knew people who taught there, and I just was like, I'm just going to go look at it. And I went over Christmas. My dad and I went and looked. I applied. And again,
your dad's like, he really likes Annie. He wants to go to school.
Yeah.
"Hello, Dean. My son would like to do theater. Can he do that? Thank you."
Well, you know what's interesting about, transferring schools, especially as a liberal arts student, is I had gone from this like major university to this liberal arts school, and they weren't going to accept all of my credits. They wanted me to like take another semester to add to get all these other credits. And so I ended up calling admissions. I faxed over. This is how ambitious I am, right? I took the catalog of OU and the catalog of Wagner, and I went through all my classes and found the equivalent classes and highlighted them, and then faxed them over to the admissions office and called them and said, "This class should transfer as this class should transfer as this," and they accepted all my credits. Wow. And I ended up transferring.
Good for you, man.
That's amazing.
There are some things that you get thrown, like limitations, or like, you can't do this, and it's up to you to just find out a way.
But that's what I learned at that time. Somebody had said this to me, and that's what drove me to do it. Was they said, if you want something bad enough, you may have to work a little harder to get it. Absolutely. But it's possible.
Mm.
And if you want something,
and then when you have that experience, then you apply it to anything else that's saying no, wagging a finger in your face, and you're like, no, I can make this happen.
Yeah.
And what was that like then, going to school in New York City? You were here where you wanted to be.
It was a culture shock, right?
From
Because I
Texas?
went
What do
from
you
like,
mean?
I went from this like, Midwest, everyone was blonde, and, naturally or not. And everyone was, just super Christian and super, conservative, to a college on Staten Island, right? And everyone was
Wow.
like, everyone was Italian and from Brooklyn or from New Jersey, and I would just come in, little blonde haired, blue eyed me, and I'd just be smiling, and they'd be like, "What the fuck you smiling at?"
Right.
And I'd be
I'm
like,
just
"What?
happy
I
to be
love
here.
musical
Fuck you.
theater. I love musical theater." They'd be like, "What the fuck? I don't trust you." They'd be, I'd be like, "What? What did I do?"
You're smiling. You're smiling.
So that was a big adjustment, and there was a lot of partying, like drug use that happened, and I was a pretty good boy up until then, but I didn't have boundaries around that, and I definitely got involved in partying, and still somehow managed to graduate, and um, I don't ask me how, but I worked. I continued to work. I booked between my junior and senior year. I booked the West Coast premiere of Footloose the musical in Las Vegas, and I did that at the Rio in Vegas for 3 months, and then came back, finished my senior year, and my senior year I booked a musical at Paper Mill Playhouse, and got my equity card.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like
And
all through your school experience, you're getting all of these professional experiences kind of mixed in with your education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something I constantly try to tell young people to do, is go work in the summers. You learn by doing. It is the best way to learn. And not only is it that you're learning how to work professionally, but you're building a network,
Yeah.
right? Those 2 summers or 3 summers in, Galveston, Oklahoma, and then I worked at Music Theater of Wichita before I transferred to Wagner. I had 3 summers of building a network of people who lived in New York City. So when I got there, I knew people.
Right.
That helped a lot, in that, because New York can be intimidating and scary, and to have a foundation of a network of people that you can trust and rely on, I think was vital, and I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't worked.
Did you have reps before you booked that show?
No, I just all through open auditions.
And did you get reps shortly thereafter, or was it a longer
When I
wait
did
for you?
Paper Mill, my first agent was when I was working at Paper Mill. Craig Burns from Telsey came to see the show and rode in the van, and I was the van driver. I don't know if you know Paper Mill, like they van people in from the city, right? And I didn't know who he was, and certainly at the time he was not Craig Burns from Telsey. He was like an associate, very kind of young casting director, and he drove in the front while I was driving, and we were talking, and I was like, what do you do? I don't remember how it came up, and I said, I'm looking for an agent now that I've got a job, and he said, "Oh, well, hit me up," and I hit him up, and he set up a meeting for me with GGRW, and they signed me, and that was my first agent.
Wow.
I mean, these stories they always surprise me whenever I ask, so how did that, it's always like just a random thing, like I was driving a van and it just so happened. It's incredible.
But I think the most important part of that story is that I was working, right? That thing that so many actors like come to me is like, I need to get an agent. And I'm like, no, you need to book work. You
Right.
need to go for the work, because it is much easier to get good work than it is to get a good agent.
Mm,
And ultimately, you could get an agent and they're a piece of shit. Then
right.
you're not like the more I learned how to drive my own career, that helped me with my agent. That helped me understand what my agent needed, because I knew how to do that. I mean, so I think that it's so important to not focus so much on getting rep, but focus on the work, because you will get an agent as a result of booking work.
Yeah, we have a lot of actors that are listening to this show, and a majority of especially new actors consider an agent as someone who is facilitating your career and the person who gets the key. That's just not true,
No.
and it's across the board in any medium that we're in. You really do. I mean, we just had an episode with Jackie and talked about how she got her first couple of gigs herself, and a lot of us, I would say the majority of my projects come from me. Adam too. You independently submit yourself. You're hustling on the side while your agent works, but it's not just the agent that's supposed to work. It's us too.
I would say they only do 10% of the work.
Exactly.
Right? So 90% of it is up to you. And, you have to know how to be your own agent.
So true.
Absolutely.
So how were you your own agent in those early years? Like, what did you do to take care of yourself, to water that seed, to foster your craft?
I think I'm naturally just a people person in general. And I never really understood why people who weren't, and I now understand it. I mean, I've been coaching long enough to understand that people just, it's not that they don't love people. It's just like they don't naturally want to reach out and email people and contact people. There's a block in the human brain that says, oh, if I reach out to someone, they're going to find it annoying, or they're going to think I'm being pushy, or whatever. And I always came from a curious place. Like, hey, I wonder how they're doing. I literally have always been like, hey, I'm thinking of somebody. I will text them, be like, hey, I'm thinking about you, And so to me, that networking and staying in touch with people was a natural thing. And I think that's part of it. I think just being able to stay in touch with people, and because the truth is, we all know everyone we need to know to have the career we want, if we just stay in touch with them. And that was always how I did that, right? Or not even being afraid to, like, for instance, when I booked Paper Mill, my first equity show, instead of going to Cancun for spring break, like most people did, I stayed in the dorms and went to every open audition that was happening that week. And one of them was Carousel, Paper Mill. And the choreographer was a guy named Robbie LaFosse, who was a Tony-nominated dancer from New York City Ballet for Jerome Robbins Broadway, who grew up, get this, in Beaumont, Texas.
How about that?
And his ballet teacher was my ballet teacher when I grew up in Beaumont. And he came once to town during a recital when I was 11. And I met him, right?
Oh.
So I show up at this audition, open call, did the dance. And when the dance was over, I went up to him, right? And this is what people don't do, that I'm like, I just naturally did it. And I just walked over to him and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm from Beaumont, and you came to town once when I was 11. And I just wanted to say thank you. This was so much fun. And because I did that, I got a call back.
Right. That's what you have to do.
Because
no one's going to do that.
No, you just got to be curious. You just got to be, and not, I think we can all be so black and white with our thinking. And it's like, but what if, instead of like, oh, they won't do this, it's like, but what if they will? Or what if I just say hi? What if I have no agenda other than just to say, hey?
Yeah.
No agenda. It's just to say hello.
Just to make a connection.
Nothing is forced. Yeah, that's great. I don't think a lot of people do that.
People are scared to do that.
When there was a movie came to town, Northern Indiana, I hit the road and drove up an hour and a half, and Gus Van Sant was there, and we were all extras. We were all like just, auditioning with a couple of lines. None of us were going to get anything, but he's in the corner, and I go up and I say, hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. If there's a role, I'm ready to play it. Anyway, maybe that had an agenda, but he said, interesting. And he kept looking at me and he kept watching me, and did I book it? No, but I got a lot of attention from that production team. I was like 18 and a half years old. I was not ready to be thrown onto a legit set, but it's stuff like that like, this is a business. And if I was selling a product, wouldn't I come up to someone who is a distributor of that product and say, hey, how are you? Here's my card. Good to see you.
Right. And because I did that show, then Robbie asked me to do his next show, which was a revival of a rare Kurt Weill musical they were doing in Philly, Lady in the Dark. And Ted Sperling was directing it, and I booked that. And that was the show we were rehearsing on. We were rehearsing at Lincoln Center. I took that morning off. Get this. I took that morning off to go to an audition for a national tour of Saturday Night Fever. And the audition was at Union Square at 890 Broadway. And so I took the train down. I lived in Midtown at the time, to Union Square, and I got to 14th Street, and they were like, the trains are no longer in service due to a police investigation. And I came above ground. I mean, I just graduated college like 3 months before this, right? 4 months before this. And so I'm super, what's going on? And I come up and I saw the two towers burning. And I didn't really understand what was happening. And I went up to 890 Broadway, and Craig Burns, who is the casting director for the tour, comes in and he says, I know some of you probably have friends and family who work at the towers. If you don't want to, we're going to cancel this and we're going to reschedule this audition. Well, I'd taken the day off from rehearsal to be there. So I was like, I don't know if I can come back because I have rehearsals. And we're going to Philly to do the show. And so we went ahead and did the audition while the towers were falling. And it was super surreal, right? And Craig Burns and we are tethered for life because there's just being in that room together on the same day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
But I tell that story because I think it's so important. Anyone who's young, who is freaking out about what's happened over the last year, is like, it comes back. It's going to be, this is definitely a different situation, but the theater came back. We will all work again, and it will look different. The world will be different, but it's we've all gone through crazy, disastrous times, and we've recovered.
Yeah, I could imagine that you two are so connected from that experience now, That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I have to imagine, for every actor who is in musical theater and that's really what their passion is, I have to imagine there's nothing like your first Broadway show and how mind-blowing of an experience that must be for said actor. Can you tell us about your experience with your first Broadway show and what that whole thing was like?
Yeah, I mean, the two most memorable, joyful moments are when your agent calls you to tell you booked it, and then opening night. Those two experiences, like, I'll never forget taking my first opening night bow in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and just crying because after all those years of just wanting to be on Broadway, it was like, I finally did it, and
it's an incredible feeling of accomplishment, I'm sure. I mean, it's a dream come true. You're literally in that moment that normal human beings, let's just be honest, I mean, not a lot of people can achieve their dreams or have that happen even multiple times in your lifetime. And here you are, catching yourself stopped in a moment where you are actually accomplishing this thing that's been in your head and your heart for most of your life. And what a gift that is to the human experience. You've gotten to enjoy that feeling. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there are certainly like a lot of lessons I learned between the first day of rehearsal and opening night, around, understanding Broadway as a commercial industry. I didn't really get that until I was actually in it. Mm-hmm. you know, it's like I've done a lot of regional theater where it's not for profit and it's super fun and it's super like there's no stakes. It's like they have subscribers and you know, on Broadway the stakes are so high when they're throwing $14 million out the window and hoping that they'll recoup and so there's a lot of pressure. I didn't really understand that until we were in rehearsals and people were so like, no, we got to make this good.
How did you take that as someone who was kind of relatively new in the game? Did you, with the stakes being high, did that affect your anxiety,
Yeah.
performance? Yeah.
Well, to put yes.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the choreographer for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was Gillian Lynn, the original choreographer for Cats and for Phantom of the
Whoa.
Opera, right?
Whoa.
And she was like 80 at the time and a genius, like just a brilliant woman. But after the first week, they fired an ensemble girl. I didn't know you could do that on Broadway. So everyone was like, oh God. So the stakes were high in that, and I think that also it was also a little disappointing in like there was a little part of my like childhood of thinking that Broadway was about talent. I mean, because it is. I mean, you have to be talented, but it's not ultimately the end game. It's really about making money because it's commercial. So, realizing that and seeing that there's this commerce part and the commerce almost has to outweigh the art because otherwise it can't run, right? And that was a huge disappointment. Not huge, but it was a disappointing moment, but like a really powerful, useful tool to see, okay, if commerce, if Broadway is commerce and art, and sometimes the art wins, sometimes the commerce wins. It's like, some shows are really, it's very interesting to see how that works. But that was a huge learning moment for me when I realized that. And then also the thing that I never planned on was like when that show closed, I was like, now what? I thought that I got a Broadway show, I'm just going to go from show to show to show. And that was like a huge lesson too. It was like, oh, I hadn't passed this moment in my life.
Yeah,
and I had to start to think
that yet.
about that. Yeah.
Wow. What was I going to ask? Did an understanding of the commerce, did that make not getting roles a little easier because you understood it as a business and it didn't hurt so much?
I don't know if I even really thought about it that way. I think I remember thinking how can I be more strategic about where my strengths lie? Right? I wasn't thinking about like, oh, I didn't get that part. It was like, okay, where do I fit into this puzzle?
Mm-hmm.
And how can my skill set be the best use of service to the creative team, to help them make the product that they want to make so they can make the money they want to make. And I learned pretty early, I'm a strong dancer. I'm a really good actor who can sing. So that makes me a great understudy. So I'm just going to own that, right? I can be in the ensemble and cover. And that was a really good, like, I'm going to own my strengths and just know that, like, not expect anything more. And just by doing that work, that's my way in. Once the right people know me, if they want to give me more roles in the next project, they can. But like, I'm going to own my strengths because if I want to work full time doing this, that's what I'm going to have to do.
And that's the thing. It's
that's
work. You're employed.
Yeah.
Like, even though you might be a go-to understudy, you're the go-to understudy and you're making a paycheck and you have a job on Broadway. And I think that's an amazing quality to have of, being aware of what your lane is and not being afraid to
embrace it.
Embrace it. Yeah, thank you. Not being afraid to embrace it and going, I'm employed, I'm on Broadway, I'm happy.
It's very
Yeah.
humble. I mean, it's very humble of you to act in that way, because I know that there are tons of people who are gunning for the roles. They see an understudy and they're like, nope, not me. Nope, that's not what I want. Well, it doesn't really matter what you want. It's what can you do and what are your muscles designed for? And if you don't embrace this path that was destined for you or set for you, or you're well suited for, then you're just going to be swinging and striking with these other ways, these other avenues that were never meant for you.
Because your expectations are on another planet.
Right.
Right. You're thinking, I think that The Secret is true. I think the law of attraction is true. I do. But you also have to be really realistic and grounded. And, one of the things that I always say to clients, when I'm coaching them is, I understand you want to play principal roles. Like, I get that. But then that means you're probably not going to work as much. And are you okay with that? Because there's only so many principal roles. And if no one knows who you are, they're not going to want to put you in those roles because you're not going to sell tickets. So you got to figure out, like, do you just want to work? And, if you do want to work, where are your strengths? How can you best serve? Because that's ultimately what our job is as a performer. Whether you're serving the creative team or you're serving the audience, you are a server. You are serving people. And you have to look at it from a place of service, right? That's the most generous human way of approaching it to me. I want to help. I want to help people something, move people, make them laugh, whatever it is. That's my job.
I think that it is so instrumental in a successful career if you have kind of perspective where you are in service, which means I'm doing something, I'm giving something to this cause, to this production, to this institution, to this audience, instead of this is for me. This is my thing. And when you take you out of the equation and you redirect it to, I'm giving this to you, my gifts are being employed, then it's more of an honorary experience than something that I'm having to slog with me. And I got it, this is all for me. You take me out and substitute you, and it's a completely different experience because you're giving rather than taking.
But that's what relationships are, right? You want to build relationships. The most important thing to me, it comes back to what we're talking about, networking and people, is relationships. Like, I want to have a reputation. I want people to be like, oh, Bret, when I think of him, I had this great memory or this great experience, or he made me laugh, or he did that thing. Of course I want to be in rehearsal with him. Of course I want him to be in my show. If his strengths are the right fit. So when I show up at an audition, it's literally just me showing up and being like, hey, like,
and not saying, sorry, I just came from another gig, I'm late. Gosh,
no, I'm gonna walk around this queue space.
Yeah, please don't do that. My favorite is to do
this quicker. I have another audition I have to get to right down the street.
I got a gig. I gotta go.
Oh my god!
What was the phrase? Got a gig, gotta go.
Got a gig, gotta go.
And Bret, you've carried all of that into so many other aspects of your life because you do so much outside of just acting. You are a life coach. You have a Broadway life apparel line. You and your husband co-host a podcast called Broadway Husbands. You are a workhorse. You have a lot going on. Where did all that come from to, add all of that to your life? Does it come from service, like you were just saying?
Yeah. A lot of it's just sort of born naturally out of curiosity. The coaching kind of came naturally. People were coming to me wanting to know, like, how did you get an agent? How did you do this? How did you? And so I was like, oh, and then I worked with a coach and I was like, oh, you can actually make a living doing that. So I got certified as a life coach and started the Broadway Life Coach brand and create content for that. And then I got really into content creation and YouTube, and then with that and Instagram, Steven and I created our Instagram account, Broadway Husbands, which now in like 2.5 years has like 56,000 followers or something. And that became a whole like another like way of expressing and also thinking about like when I was 13 and I wanted to be on Broadway, I had no examples of what it would look like to be a gay married couple doing that. And I was
Yeah.
like, and I'm doing that. Like, I remember there was a moment, it was during The Little Mermaid when we did that show, and Steven and I were newly dating. And I had this moment where I was like, I am the person I always imagined myself being in this moment. You know, I'm in this relationship and I'm on Broadway and then so the Broadway husbands thing was born out of this like, okay, I know I can help somebody who or normalize this a little bit so that people can see that you don't have to be a total freakazoid to work on Broadway or to make a living doing this and you can thrive in a healthy relationship. So kind of born out of that. So yeah, curiosity mostly. Sometimes it gets me in trouble.
That's amazing. You came to the realization that everything that you wanted in life, love and accomplishments and purpose and passion and positive influence, it all kind of was gifted to you over so many years, and then you come to that realization like, oh my God. And I think it's very human for us to think like, oh well, I have these incredible dreams, but they're not going to happen because I don't deserve it. And part of what you're doing, part of Book It, part of the podcast itself is to remind people you do have dreams. And here are some people who had those same dreams and made it possible. There's no reason that we need to, no matter where you're from, Southeast Texas, Indiana, California, whatever, it doesn't matter where you're from. It's all so possible. And it's only from only people who have done it can tell people that
It's true.
it is.
It's true.
Brett, you should write
Amazing.
a book.
You should.
I would love to write a book. I need a ghostwriter. I'm so ADHD, I just can't sit down for too long.
I see like all the things that you have going on in your life. It feels like vacationing would be really hard for you.
Yeah. It's funny, like somebody asked me like, what is your downtime like? And I do take downtime, but usually it's like watching something. And even if we're like on vacation, I'm still like coloring, journaling, writing, making content. But I find like creating is my downtime. Like I love to create and I love editing photos or making videos. It's like, it's an outlet. And I'm not thinking about it. Again, I think that this is maybe the word of this episode is like, I was curious. I'm not thinking like I'm doing this so that I can get more followers. I'm thinking, what if I try this and see how it goes and see how people react or see if it helps somebody today. That's literally how I've always approached it. And I like doing that because it's genuine and it's real. And I'm not trying to, if it helps somebody, great. If it's not somebody's cup of tea, great. No problem. Like I'm not here. I've learned very early, like not everyone's going to like you. Job is not to be liked, but people can decide and because they will know me. Regardless if they like me, they will know me.
And it's amazing in this conversation, I've noticed you have an incredible ability, which for actors is very hard. We'll all admit it seems easy for you to take ego out of the equation.
Yeah. I don't even know that I think about it. I think, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't, tell me more about that. I don't know what you mean.
Oh, well, no, like what we were
give me an
saying.
example.
It's probably because you're less fueled about your ego and more fueled about purpose and affecting other people in a positive change in the world. It's less about look at this credit, look at this photo, look at my life. It's more like this is what I have a vocation, and my vocation includes helping people, inspiring people, moving people, and so you
And
take
having
ego
such
out
a
because
realistic
it's your
view
your service
on your career and
Yeah.
Not seeing it as it's this or nothing, and instead like what you were talking about with being understudy and being like just being realistic about everything and wanting to serve people and wanting to help people. And it's very inspiring.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if, I used to always beat myself up. Oh, I'm too nice. Or I wish I was more, sometimes I would be like, because you see people who are like more ego driven. I think this is what you mean. We know those people who are sort of like, I'm a star no matter what you say. And I didn't enjoy working with those people. Like, it was like,
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're nominated for an Emmy or whatever. Like, good for you. But who did they have to hurt along the way, in order to get there? Or what lies did they have to tell themselves about, I don't know. Or, who did they have to kind of, I've witnessed people be very vicious to get what they want. And I just never wanted to be that person. I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to be able to like wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and feel good about myself. And
happiness isn't something that you can wrestle into submission. It's happiness. It should be attained the right way. Otherwise, it's just manipulated success.
Totally.
Bret Shuford, effortlessly charming and constantly curious.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm putting that on my website.
That's the book. That's the title of the book. Done. I'll write it because you're too ADD.
You're absolutely going to write a book one day.
I'm planning on it. I have so many listen to stories. Some of these shows, I want to write one book, a tell-all book about working for Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, I bet there's a whole episode about that. Lord.
Epic.
Drag her. Yes. Do it. Say her name. Bret, thank you so much again for being here. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And where can
Thanks,
where
Bret.
can everybody,
you're a good man. We hope to have you on again.
Where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, come check me out. Go to bretshuford.com. Everything's there. It's Bret with one T. If anyone who's looking to up their digital online presence, I'm teaching a workshop in April. You can get more details at imposter-to-influencer-map.com. You can sign up and get a free download there. And of course, I'm on Instagram and all the things at Bret Shuford.
And with the world coming back, is there anything in the pipeline or not yet, or with shows?
I still have Wicked. Once we know what's happening, so I'm waiting to hear about that. And then
I feel like that's coming back for sure. I don't think Wicked's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Bret,
again for being here.
please come back. Thanks a million.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Bye, Bret.
Bye, Bret.
Thank you.